I want to bring in Reza Sayar, one of the few Western journalists there in Tehran. Reza, I've got to ask you, it's been some time now since President Obama addressed the General Assembly. Have you been able to get some reaction to that speech?
We have, Aisha, and the reaction has ranged from cautious optimism to a lot of excitement and hope that perhaps Iran and the U.S., after a 34-year bitter rivalry, are on their way to somehow, some way improving relations. This was a speech where President Obama essentially reached out to the Iranian leadership and said, let's try to work out our problems diplomatically. Obviously, they haven't accomplished anything yet. They haven't even met President Rouhani and President Obama haven't even met at the UN General Assembly. But even the fact that we're talking about the possibility of improved relations between the U.S. and Iran says that at least some things are changing. The world is going to be watching to see what these countries do in the coming days and weeks when it comes to improving relations. President Obama said a lot of things that the Iranian leadership wanted to hear. First and foremost, he said that the U.S. does not want regime change. This has been a big concern for the Iranian leadership. The big hurdle when it comes to these two countries remains the nuclear issue. There's plenty of signals by leaders here that Iran is prepared to make some concessions, perhaps suggestions that Iran is willing to consider suspending uranium enrichment at 20%, which would seemingly make it impossible for them to make a bomb. Also suggestions that Iran is willing to accept broader inspections of their facilities, but obviously they want something substantial in return. First and foremost, they want the U.S. to recognize Iran's leadership as the legitimate leadership of this country. They want the U.S. to recognize Iran's right for a peaceful nuclear program and the right to enrich uranium, and they want an easing of those tough economic sanctions. Can these two countries get together and hammer out some sort of agreement on the nuclear issue? If they do, Aisha, the implications are huge, not just for Tehran and Washington, but for this critical region that's so important when it comes to how the world runs. Aisha?
And Reza, for a lot of people watching around the world, the critical question is why now? Why are we now seeing this apparent thawing in relations? Is it simply about having a new man at the top in the form of Hassan Rouhani?
There's all sorts of theories. One theory suggests that the leadership here, led by the supreme leader, simply do not view the current path that has isolated Iran as sustainable. There's another theory that says it's becoming tougher for Western powers, especially the U.S., to take a harder line with this particular president, President Rouhani. Remember, it was easy for President Obama, Washington, and Western powers to take a tough stance against a fiery president like President Ahmadinejad, the former president. But when you have someone like President Rouhani being conciliatory, talking about peace, it's tough for Washington to take a hard-line stance. But in the end, it's all about concrete steps to reaching a deal when it comes to the nuclear program, and certainly lots of obstacles in their way. President Obama cannot act unilaterally. There's the U.S. Congress that's dominated by anti-Iran hawks that don't want improved relations. And then you have Washington's top ally in the region, Israel. The leadership there, led by Prime Minister Netanyahu, they view Iran as a threat, and they certainly don't want improved relations between Washington and Tehran, Aisha.